Is it okay during, or
Yeah,
would you prefer?
that's fine. No.
Whatever.
Yep. All right. So how many of you have had the opportunity to take care of aging parents? How many of you are aging parents yourself? All right. So whether you're on that side or this side, I think this will apply to you. I had the opportunity to be able to care for my father-in-law, and after he had a stroke, and I also was able to care for my mother when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Interesting enough, I actually started my career back in labor and delivery 40 plus years ago, and worked in that for 25 years and taught at a community college, but then I went into geriatrics. Someone asked me one day, you know, how do you go from labor and delivery to geriatrics? And I said, it's the life cycle. It really is. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. You know, and Gail said that I was a certified dementia instructor and thought I knew everything about caregiving and dementia until I experienced it myself. And I think experience in itself is the best teacher. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. I'll share some of my experiences. But really, I think it's important that we kind of open our eyes and ears and kind of think about how we want this to play out for our children if we cared for our parents. Whoops. So, alrighty, I'm screwing up. All right, there we go. And I can't see this very well from an angle, so I'm going to come back here and I'll be moving around the room a little bit. So nearly 1 in 5, that's about 19% of the population, are providing, this is the key, unpaid care to an adult with health or functional needs. Alzheimer's disease, strokes, Parkinson's disease, cognitive ability, car accidents, other neurogenic diseases. There's a lot of different reasons people become caregivers. More Americans are caring for more than one person, up from 18% in 2015. And so as we age and we see the baby, and I'm a baby boomer, as we see the baby boomers age and health has supported us living, we're living longer. And what happens is sometimes families have both parents to take care of. So that in itself can be a problem. More family caregivers have difficulty coordinating care. It's difficult. I don't know if any of you were in Carol Brandt's talk when she talked about the different levels of health insurance and long-term care. And when we look at Medicaid, there's ways that we can coordinate that care, but sometimes it's very expensive. I added up, you'll see one of the, it doesn't come up yet, but it'll come up, and it says that on an average, a family caregiver typically spends about $7,000 out of pocket annually. And I will tell you that I took tabs of everything that I did for my mom for 1 year, and it was $30,000. Because, you know, we had the insurance on the house, we had the taxes on the house, Mom wouldn't move. So in order to keep her in her home, and she was self-employed all those years, so she didn't have an IRA or anything like that, we ended up having to keep her in her home by paying the home insurance and, you know, paying the taxes every year. And then we did a lifeline, and then we had someone come in and do, you know, daily care. So it adds up. Whether it's $7,000 or $30,000, you don't get that money back. That's not retrievable. So think about, either for yourself or having those conversations with your parents about how they want, how do they see the rest of their life, and how do they want to live it. One thing I tell people is don't make promises, because you don't know if you can keep those promises. I was able to care for my father-in-law in my home up until he had a second stroke. But when he had his second stroke, and it was a little more significant than the first one, we lived in a 2-story house. So he was in our family room. That was now his room, was our family room. We didn't have a basement, and I had 3 kids in high school. So, you know, we made it work, but at the point where he could no longer ambulate and we couldn't get him up the stairs, we had to think about a community setting. And when I talk about community settings, that's my term for what other people would call institutionalizing someone. SNFs, long-term care, memory support. I hate that word institutional because we all want to think about what we call person-centered care. That's very important to us and to our family. And so I use the term community. So when you hear me say community care, I'm really talking about all those different areas that people can live if they have problems. Now, I never promised him that would or wouldn't happen, but my sister, my older sister, had made a promise to my mom that she would never, put her in a community setting. I never made that promise because I'm a little more pragmatic maybe, and or I don't like making plans, maybe that's it, I don't know. But when it came time that had to happen because we could no longer handle her care anymore, my sister had really a lot of regrets because she had promised Mom, but she couldn't do that anymore. We'll talk about having those conversations and allowing that person, and we want to give them as much as we can, and so we want to hear what they have to say, but how we can phrase that so they know we have their best interest at heart. More Americans are caring for someone with Alzheimer's disease or dementia. You know, I never thought in a million years someone like my mom would have Alzheimer's disease. Very active, just out there, was an artist, did a lot of different things, and her mother lived to 99. So those are some of the surprises in life. More Americans say caregiving made their own health worse. That is very true, and we'll talk about the stress of caregiving in a minute. Family caregiving spans across all generations. We're the sandwich generation because we cared for our children and we're caring for our older adult parents, and my kids will be doing that. They're raising kids and then they're having to think about what's going to happen with their parents. A lot of us are still working. I'm retired. This is my retirement job. I love it. I get to do what I really love in life, but a lot of us are still working full-time, managing a family and doing caregiving, so it can be very difficult. So what happens if we become a caregiver suddenly or a planned caregiver? So if you have a chronic illness, someone has something like MS or ALS, you might have time to plan and think about that. But like many of us, we don't like to think about that. Aging parents, just the act of aging and our body kind of slowing down and not being able to do what we did before. Dementia and other cognitive diseases, maybe an accident, car accident, a fall, a cancer diagnosis, and a stroke. All of those things you will either have a planned or an unplanned. And I will tell you, probably either one of them are not good because we tend not to plan. We listen to all the speeches, we talk to financial planners, we talk to family members, and then we kind of let it slide. So think about really having those conversations within your family and talk to your kids about it and say, what happens if I have an accident? This is what, and I was not able to stay home anymore. This is what I want. There's some people that want to live there with their children. I don't want to live with my children. I want to live as independent as I can, but I have to be practical as well. I like to call the caregivers the boots on the ground. Family caregivers have the knowledge, the well-being, and sustained engagement with healthcare providers, and they are critical to the success of both medical and psychosocial components of care. And I don't care if you're a full-time caregiver or you're just with your partner and you're going to the hospital. Someone needs to be there to advocate for them. You don't have to be old to do this. The story I'll tell you was about 10 years ago now. And I just happened to be at the because I'm a nurse, you know, I'm going to be there. And my husband had what they call a mechanical bowel obstruction because he had had the flu. So the bowel kind of twisted. So he was getting sicker at home. I took him to the ER and they did a CAT scan and they saw that he had this. So he had an NG tube put in and he was placed in a bed in the hospital. Now there's something that we have at the hospital called safe name alert. And that would be if anybody has the same name as the other person in the next bed. This was a very particularly busy fall night. There was a lot of flu going around, and there were hardly any beds at the hospital. So my last name is Petrik. He was put in the room with a last name in the next bed of Petrik. It never should have happened, but it did. I just happened to be there when the nurse came in to my husband and said, "It's time for your insulin, Mr. Petrik." And I sat straight up in the chair and I said, "He is not Mr. Petrik, nor is he a diabetic. The insulin would have killed him." So I think it's very important for whether you're with an older person or a younger person and they're going to the hospital, you need another set of eyes, you need another set of ears, and you need to ask questions. And if something sounds uncomfortable to you, if something doesn't sound like it makes sense, you need to ask questions. As we age and we age and have dementia, there is another hiccup in that a person with dementia may be at a stage in their dementia where they don't remember who they are or who their family is or why they're even in the hospital. And when I was an educator in a nursing home, I was listening to the nurses say to family members of people that had gone out to the emergency room, "Oh, you don't have to go to the emergency room, they'll be taken care of." And I said, no. Family members need to be there because that person has something, they're going to have something called transfer trauma. And transfer trauma is when someone with dementia is moved from one location to another location. And they get confused because of that. And think about how many times someone might be